you come to realize that there are no accidents in this universe. Everything that takes place have the pieces moved around by something bigger than all of us. And so it was called the I Am Discourses. And I quote from the I Am Discourses. The first expression of every individual everywhere in the universe, either in spoken word, silent thought, or feeling, is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, me, you, all of us, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression, in words or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you. You must be conscious of how you use these words. I am. I am strong. I am well. I am content. Even if your senses tell you something different, I am. And as we move now into the meat of this program, you'll see that putting the words I am in front of something into your mind and imagination is a very powerful way to attract into your life, recognizing your own divinity. Particularly the work of Neville and the work of U.S. Anderson and the I Am Discourses. I came up with, in putting that all together, what I call five wishes fulfilled foundations for being able to attract into your world and become the kind of person that you expect yourself to be. Remember what I said about the quote on the wall of the swimming pool. If you want to accomplish anything, which means to become an extraordinary level of consciousness person, you must first expect it of yourself. You must see yourself and be unafraid to say to yourself, I am connected at all times to my source, to the divine mind, to the Tao, to God, to that which is the creator of all. I am a part of it. And the first of these five foundations I call imagination. Imagination. Many of our greatest thinkers have spoken about the power of imagination. William Blake said that what is now proved was once only imagined. Now think about the importance of that. If you want to have something show up in your life, the kind of person you would like to become, manifest something new into your life, something powerful, whatever it might be, you obviously must first be able to imagine it. Your imagination. This is yours and yours alone. You can place anything into your imagination that you want to place there, independent of what anybody else says about it, independent of what your senses tell you, independent of all the evidence that may be to the contrary. You can place into your imagination an I am that represents what you would like to attract into your life and make it come into fruition. Einstein's most famous quote, one of his most famous observations, he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Placing these I ams into your imagination, I had some of you I'm sure know about it because it's been all over the papers and so on, a diagnosis of leukemia a couple of years ago. And for a while, I kind of began to believe some of the things that were being told to me about what happens when you have this particular kind of leukemia. And I have instead, in the last year or so, had some of the most amazing, astonishing things happen into my life, where I have felt just so alive and so strengthened and so fully connected to my source, knowing. Basically, I have a knowing in here that life itself is a sexually transmitted terminal disease, okay? That's basically the fact, all right? So I'm not saying that all you have to do is put into your imagination an I am that says I am and you're going to live forever. That isn't, but every moment that you do have until you are called can be a moment of exquisite, extraordinary power, living from that place. And that's the decision that I made. I have never felt so powerful as I have the last several years, since I recognized the power that I have in my imagination to place something there and live from it. Einstein once said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want your children to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. It's one of the reasons I've taken to writing children's books, to give children an opportunity to explore that thing called their imagination from the time that they're just little boys and little girls. What I have in my imagination is a do not disturb sign. And it's like mentally inside, I've placed that in there. I do not anyone to disturb or try to change around anything that I have placed in there about what is possible for me. So you never want to place into your imagination any thought that you would not want to materialize. You never want to allow in your imagination to be contaminated by the way life used to be. Your imagination is yours. Don't let any other people influence you. Never allow people's ideas about what is possible or impossible for you to occupy your imagination. I've called it, throughout my life, I've called it being a scurvy elephant. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was living in a foster home out in Mount Clemens, Michigan, and I came home from school and I talked to Mrs. Scarf and I said, Mrs. Scarf, what's a scurvy elephant? And she said, where did you hear that? And I said, I don't know, Mrs. Poole, my 3rd grade teacher, was talking to the principal, Mrs. Smith, and she said Wayne Dyer was in his classroom and called me a scurvy elephant. So she got on the phone and she called up and the principal said, oh, that's Wayne. He gets everything mixed up. She didn't say that he was a scurvy elephant in her classroom. She said that he was a disturbing element in her classroom. A disturbing element is someone who has in their imagination the possibility that they can do anything, that all things are possible. Again, it's one of those great lines from the New Testament. With God, all things are possible. Now you tell me, what does that leave out? What does all things are possible leave out? That doesn't leave out the possibility that we can defy gravity, that we can soar, that we can heal ourselves, that we can create magnificent prosperity in our life, that we can change the world. I said at one of the breaks here to the audience here tonight, I really believe that if this message gets out there into the world, we can shift the consciousness of this planet. If enough of us begin to believe, we're placing into our imagination a world that we want to live in, that has no limitations, and that is based on living from a place of love and kindness and God consciousness and spiritual awareness, divine mind at work. I believe it's possible. If enough of us begin to believe that we can create that kind of a world, if public television can put on these kinds of programs, which is why I am a part of public television, because this is what they broadcast. This is what comes into our homes. The energy of all things are possible, not the energy of violence and hatred and, and all of the silly stuff that you see so frequently on commercial and cable television, especially the violence and especially the rude communication between young children and their parents and so on. You don't see that here. It's why I'm here, raising money for this station and all public television stations. Einstein, once again, this man of imagination, said logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. That's the first of these wishes fulfilled foundations. The second foundation is very significant and very important. I call it living from the end. This is one of the harder ones for people to get, but I'd like you to go again to the New Testament. Look at Romans 4:17. In the presence of him whom he believed God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. And calls those things which do not exist as though they did. Those are very important, significant words. You have to be able to call the things which you have not seen yet materialize and manifest into your physical world. You have to be able to say to yourself, I call those things that I would like to become as if they already do. And you place into your imagination fearlessly the I ams which you would like to create for yourself. And when it's time for me to write another book, I don't even know what it's going to be. I just know that it starts germinating inside me. And it's like a calling, it's like a passion. And I'm over there at my writing space. And before I do, I come up with the title. And before I even write one word, I did it with this book, Wishes Fulfilled. I take a jacket, this isn't even my book. And I take this jacket and I ask the art department at Hay House if they will please design a book with this title. And I put it around another book, which I have done, and I set it on my writing space next to Ralph Waldo Emerson and Jesus Christ picture and Paramahansa Yogananda and my children and the people that I love deeply and profoundly in my life. And I look at it with 3 white candles that I light every single time I sit over there. And I look at that jacket. And it's as if I call those things. The book does not exist. I call it as if it did. When my leukemia diagnosis came in, the information that was sent to me continuously was, it's incurable. This is something that you can't change. And I would say to my children who would send me this, I would say, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't send me that kind of stuff. And they'd say, what do you mean? Why, Dad? Why wouldn't you want us to send that? It says that right in there. I said, what part of I am well is it that you don't understand? Because I have placed that into my imagination. I have a wonderful quote by the man I've cited before. His name is Neville, and it goes like this. He says, disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, disregard all evidence of your senses, that is what your eyes and ears tell you, that deny the fulfillment of your desire, whatever it is you want to attract into your life. Disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you already are what you want to be. For in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being, your extraordinary self, which is what this program is about, are merged in creative unity, and with your infinite being, God, all things are possible. God never fails, and you are a piece of that which never fails. And you are going to move beyond just being a piece and just being a fragment and just being a segment until it becomes your overwhelming knowing that you have within you this divine capacity. You don't need evidence of your senses. I wrote a book a few years back. The title of it, I had to get my publisher because they didn't understand it. They called back, they said, I think you got this wrong. I said, no, it's called You'll See It When You Believe It. Not the other way around. People will say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. It doesn't work that way. You'll see it when inside you have a knowing. And Neville also said, therefore, to incarnate a new and a greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption. Now, this flies in the face of so much of what you've been told, because you have a tendency to believe that what your eyes and ears tell you is reality. But this is what we know by our senses. Just this little tiny fragment. I can't even get, it's like a millionth of a millimeter. And all that is unknown is in the invisible, in the imagination. And most of our attention is focused on, this is my beliefs and my disbeliefs about what is possible and what isn't possible are here. And it's an endless universe. So placing I ams into your imagination is one thing. It's an intellectual act. Living from the end means that you call the things which do not exist as if they did. You begin to say to yourself, you don't have to say it to anyone else, you don't have to write it down, you don't have to get anybody else's approval, you don't have to look on the internet, you don't have to do anything like that.
Everything, remember, has a dharma. Every creature, every rose, and every human being has a dharma. You're already fulfilling it physically. You're already in the bodies that you were intended to be in. Remember what I said before, it is not about where you are, it's about what direction you're headed. And as long as you know you're heading in the direction of staying here in meaning. Now, this concept of a calling, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Inspiration, in Spirit. And the subtitle is called Your Ultimate Calling. So I'm going to introduce a word here to help you to identify your calling. And that word is passion. And it doesn't make any difference to me whether that passion has anything to do with making a living, or it's a part of the DOT, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. What is it that you find passion about? And the only condition I place on it is that it is in alignment with God or with your source. All right? So that your passion, if your passion is about killing other people, for example, if your passion is about stealing, if your passion is about, I often said that there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One of the ways to have the tallest building in town, always, is to go around and knock down anybody else's building when they start getting taller than yours. So as soon as they get up, if you're at the 44 floors and they get to 43, 44, you just go over and you put some explosives in there and you just blow it up. And you say, I have the tallest building in town. And this is, by the way, our collective ego. This is what we do in our society and in our world, and which is about, if you really want to know my passion and my calling, it's about shifting the entire consciousness of this planet before I leave it. And that's why the film titled The Shift is so significant to me, because I know that if I can get 10 million people to watch that film, The Shift, if I can get 10 million people in America and Canada to watch that film, that we reach something called pi, 3.1416, remember? And if you can get 3.1416% of a population to align, the rest of it's called a critical mass in physics. You reach what is called phase transition. And if you align enough people or electrons or subatomic particles up and align them in a certain way in an energy field, and you reach what they call the 100th monkey, when you reach that point, all the rest of the electrons or the people in that energy field begin to align as well. And we have aligned ourselves collectively with a consciousness that allows for people to knock down other people's buildings. The other way to have the tallest building in town is to always work on your own building and not be concerned with anybody else's building or what anyone else out there is doing, or being consumed with trying to compete with or win or defend. To listen to your calling. So your calling is the thing within you that has your attention, that has your passionate attention. And it doesn't make any difference whether it makes sense to anybody else. It's the thing that you feel inside of you that you're here for. It's Mr. Holland in Mr. Holland's opus. And here's the secret, here's the thing that I learned. That it's the presence of the passion. That when you have the presence of the passion within you for what it is that you feel is your calling, everything else will take care of itself. That is an indication that you have God within you and guiding you. The word enthusiasm and theos, iasm, translates to the God within in Greek. The God within. When you are enthusiastic about something, anything, when you have that kind of internal knowing that this is what I'm doing. And sometimes you have to, that Shakespeare's, he wasn't just a great writer, he was an incredible philosopher. Probably the most famous lines from Shakespeare are from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. And that's a very profound question. But what follows that is much more profound. He said, after to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the minds of men to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and thus by opposing end them. You have to ask the question, and that's what this program is about, and that's what the movie is about, and that's what the book is about, and that's what all of it is about. To be or not to be. Am I going to be who I came into this world to be, and there's something inside of me that has always been calling me to it? Or am I going to allow the slings and arrows of an outrageous fortune that has been imposed upon me by others to dictate my dharma? That's really the question. And it's a question that you can answer and respond to and live with.
All of it is there to teach us something grand and something delightful, and that helps us move to higher and more spiritual places. So the way that you eliminate adversity is literally to be thankful for it and to say thank you for everything that is showing up in my life. It is going to teach me something profound. And some of the most difficult and very troublesome kinds of things that have occurred to me in my life, what I thought were at the time, have taught me how to be a better writer, a better speaker, a kinder person, a better human being. Because true nobility, it's not about being better than other people. It's about being better than you used to be. And the way that you get better at being than you used to be is by having these challenges show up and then transcending them and overcoming them. I don't look back on my days of drinking, which stopped 17 years ago, as anything other than great and wonderful events that helped me. All of that drinking and all of the behavior and the drugs that I did and all of those kinds of things have helped me to become a stronger, more purified, more decent, better human being, better husband, better father, better speaker, better man as a person. Anyway, let me try to get through the rest of these. We just have a few moments left.
Okay.
Were you going to say something, Diane?
Well, I was going to say, do you think people get caught up in the why me kind of mentality?
Yeah, I think they do, instead of saying, why not me? So thank you. Thank you for all of it, every single bit of it. I mean, there's a slogan here on Maui that says, no rain, no rainbows. So I always remind people of that whenever there's a rainy day and the tourists are all here and they're all upset about the rain. I say, but you see all those rainbows that you just love every day? They have rainbows over here on the island. You can't have them without the rain. And I think it's a good symbol for our lives. One of the things that Gandhi said that's really, I think, very important is that there's more to life than making things go faster and making it always increase our speed. That the idea that we have to get there fast, we have to be ahead of the other person, slowing ourselves down. In the 26th verse of the Tao that I was writing about this morning, it talks about the stillness, about being able to that stillness is the mother of unrest. In other words, the master of unrest. In other words, in order to be able to get to a place where you are no longer filled with unrest, you have to go to this place of stillness, this place of quiet, this place of peace that is within each and every one of us. And that means not telling yourself that you have to be there ahead of the other guy, not rushing through the traffic lights, but meditating your way through when a yellow light comes, instead of rushing through it, that's just a habit. Instead of that, just slowing down, putting your foot on the brake and saying, thank you for 1 minute to just sit here and be at peace and be kind and be in a sense of harmony with my source, which is always at peace. Also, I said, do everything that you can to eliminate debt in your life, because all of the debt that you have, the credit card debt, the money that you owe the banks, the mortgages, all of those kinds of things are a way of giving up control of your life and putting it into the hands of someone who will be controlling the purse strings of your life. and also to let go of your idea about everything is evaluated on the basis of how much it costs or how much it's worth. Try to take the dollar value off of things and just enjoy everything in your life for what it is.
I'm going through something right now, and I'm kind of wanting to know why all this is happening to me in my life. At 15, my dad died unexpectedly of, an aortic aneurysm, and then I dealt with that somewhat decent. I don't want to say great, but I was only 15, and then I got married, and my husband and I struggled for 4.5 years to get pregnant with one miscarriage along the way. And we got pregnant in November last year. We found out December 8th. And then on April 4th, we found out that the baby was really sick. Mm-hmm. And I ended up delivering a stillborn on April 19th. Mm-hmm. And I'm just not quite sure why all this is happening and how to get through it.
Yeah, I can hear your pain. First of all, as you move along this path that I'm writing about, especially in inspiration, you find out that all of the greatest teachers who've ever walked among us, including Jesus, all of them, have taught us that death is not a punishment. That it is the inevitability of all things. That everything that composes decomposes, and the question isn't whether it's going to decompose. The question that we have as human beings is how long is it going to take? How much time do we get? When you say the words, "My father died unexpectedly," my immediate response to that is unexpected to you.
Yeah.
But not to God, and not, and that the moment that your father was conceived and the moment that he showed up on this planet, his birth was here, independent of his opinion about it, and so was his death. And the same is true of the miscarriages that you've had and the stillbirths that you've had, that there's a perfection in all of this, and that these souls who showed up very, very temporarily, and then for whatever reason that none of us will ever be privy to, weren't ready to show up into this world. What you are doing with it is you're taking it personally. You're saying to yourself, why me? And how could something so terrible as this happen? And how much of this kind of thing do I have to put up with before I'll have peace in my life? And I'm saying to you, have peace in your life now, and even be in a state of gratitude for just the fact that you've been able to participate in the dance of life. You've already created life twice. And because it didn't last as long as you thought it should last, that's just our ego at work.
I tell people, supposing you went to sleep and you had a dream, and in your dream you had all these different characters, and you had all of this money, and you had everything that you wanted in your dream. And then you woke up, and then you look back at your dream, and you became attached to the stuff that you had in your dream. And you said, wait a minute, I want that. There was gold in there. There was silver. There was all of these friends. I had a Ferrari there. I mean, all of this. I got to have that. Somebody would come away and cart you off and put you in a rubber room and say, that was a dream. You can't be attached to that. That's just a thought that you have. That's the way you got to view life. Instead of it being an 8-hour dream, it's an 80-year dream or a 90-year dream. And at the end of the dream, you don't want to be looking back at all of the stuff that you wish you could still have, because you can't have it. You don't get any of that. So you try to detach yourself now, while you're here, while you're alive, from the need to have that stuff. Instead, you just let it sort of all flow. As absurd as it would be for you to be attached to the stuff that you had in your dream, it's that absurd for you to be attached to the stuff that you're having in this dream. You have to die while you're alive. Now, that's a very hard concept for people to get. But you have to experience your own death while you're alive. Let me tell you a story. It's a wonderful story. It's an old, ancient story. I'll paraphrase it. There was a hunter who lived in India. And he would go to Africa every 2 years. And he would bring back animals and prizes and things like that. Well, one year he took off and he went to the jungle. And he discovered this large enclave inside the jungle. And it was filled with beautiful parrots, beautiful birds, multicolored, and they all talked. And he couldn't get over it. And he put a net out over one of the trees, and he captured one of the parrots. And he put the parrot in a cage. And he brought the parrot back to be with him in India as his pet. And he fed the parrot sunflower seeds, and he fed him rice, and he took wonderful care of him. He was very good, kept him in the cage. 2 years went by, and he talked to the parrot every day. And he said to the parrot, "I'm now going back to Africa. Is there anything you would like me to say to your friends back there in the jungle when I'm back there?" The parrot said, "Yes. Tell them that I'm very happy in my cage. Tell them that I am joyful and that I love being in my cage here with you. Just tell them that." The hunter went back to Africa. He went back to the place in the jungle where he had been 2 years before. And he told the story. He said, "Your friend that I took back has a message for you. And the message is that he is happy in his cage, that he is joyful with me, and that he has no regrets." At the instant of hearing that, a bird on one of the branches keeled over and dropped dead. Dropped dead, stiff. The hunter assumed that he was just filled with sorrow at hearing of what had happened to his friend. So he went back to India, and he told his parrot what had happened. He said, "I went back and I did just as you said. And I told them all out there, and at the moment that I told it, apparently one of the parrots was so upset that he'd missed you so much that he just dropped dead. And at the instant that that happened, the parrot in the cage keeled over, dead. His legs went straight up in the air, and he went stiff. The hunter was beside himself. He couldn't figure out how could this happen. And he took the dead parrot out of the cage, opened it up, and threw it out on the woodpile. The instant that the parrot landed on the woodpile, he flew up to the branch. And the hunter said, "You tricked me. What is this? I thought you were dead." And the parrot said, "My friend was sending me a message. He told me, by his actions, that in order for you to escape from your cage, you must die while you're alive." Okay, now that's an old story. That's an ancient story that's been told over the years. What does it mean? I mean, don't you see that this is a cage? That the whole planet is a cage? If you can just stand back far enough and see that we're still restricted by the limitations placed on us as human beings. We're stuck here, or maybe in our homes, or in wherever we are. We're all in cages. And even though we have more room to manipulate, we may even have a whole planet, we're still sort of in cages. Now, how do you escape from the cage that you're in? You have to die while you're alive. You have to literally experience your own death. All of us have to. All of us are going to die. So why not experience it in advance? And see yourself out of your body, gone, but able to look back at what's going on now. Just like the dream, where you have the dream and you have everything you want, but you're able to look back at it. As you do that, you begin to see the folly, the absurdity of hanging on to anything, of being attached to anything, of needing anything, of telling yourself that I can't be happy if, from the perspective of having died, but being able to look back on it just like the dream. As soon as you can do that, as soon as you can experience yourself formless, dimensionless, form and all of the attendant things that you hang on to become irrelevant. They're not necessary any longer. You have a whole new way of living, a new way of being.
You may believe that the opposite of love is hate. I do not see these two emotions as opposites. In fact, love and hate are often closely aligned. To me, the opposite of love is fear. When you have fear, you do not have love. Ego uses fear as a way to keep authentic love out of your life. When love is not present in your life, you have succumbed to ego and allowed fear in where love could be. You have allowed ego to replace God. Learning to experience authentic love means abandoning ego's insistence that you have much to fear and that you are in an unfriendly world. This begins with an assessment of your reluctance to embrace love. If you are not experiencing love in your life right now, it is because you are, in some way, afraid. You need to examine your fears with honesty and with love. When you do, you will transform your fears
into love. You will open up a space within you that can only be occupied by love. In this space you are on purpose, walking the way of the sacred self. But first, you must see how you substitute fear for love. Your ego steadfastly promotes fear because it fears authentic love itself. This false self helps you convince yourself that you are in some way incomplete. That is the source of all fear. Afraid of having your emptiness, your incompleteness exposed, you expend a lot of energy creating a false image of happiness. The fear about exposing the emptiness keeps you seeking relationships that ego tells you will satisfy the longing within you. What happens is that you enter a relationship starved for the love that is your higher self. Your inner hunger is masked, pretending to be something else. No wonder so many people repeatedly think they have found love and repeatedly declare they've lost it. How different it is when you can notice the inner emptiness and think, what's not to like? This longing is part of being human and knowing love. Then you will let ego know that fear is not your choice. Love is your choice. Just imagine how our system might be if people knew they were already complete. What would you need to purchase? What would you need to have to own? Who would you have to impress? Who would you need to have on your arm? The answers give you an idea of how much we rely on the fear that we are incomplete and unacceptable as we are, and how unaware we are of our divine connection. The fear that is a substitute for love is simply a fear of being unacceptable. Virtually all fears can be traced directly back to self-esteem. If you love yourself, you will be able to transform your fears with love rather than allow them to direct your life. If you have an inner feeling of being complete and whole, knowing the loving presence that is there, then fear becomes a loving invitation to know more or to change something in your life. Fear will no longer threaten you as it did when you were unacquainted with your higher self. The inability to rely on the love that is our very essence shows up in many forms. Your ego wants you to believe that you are unacceptable and will gleefully assist you in creating an image to prove that it is so. Manifestations like obesity and personal slovenliness and eating disorders often are the fear-based projection of yourself. Ego can influence you to shun all efforts to be loved by others by refusing to allow the risk of an intimate encounter or the development of an intimate relationship. Ego often makes you selfishly pursue your own goals at others' expenses. You engage in perpetual conversation about yourself. We often use economic, social, and other types of excuses to defend behavior that does not extend love. For instance, you might excuse unloving or inconsiderate behavior because it's only my job, or because everyone else does it. Expressions of disgust or rudeness towards others are based on ego. They are heard in stores, on freeways, in offices, at airports, in restaurants, any place you are in your daily life. These are some of the common expressions of a fear-based ego struggling to keep you away from the experience of love that is your true essence. Before you begin to change these behaviors and thought patterns, you need to examine the payoffs. What is some part of your receiving as a payoff for listening intently to ego? Your ego works for its living. Its payoff is not money, but just in keeping alive. Your ego is not open to making contact with God because it would be immediately put out of business. Your ego is in direct conflict with your true purpose for being there. You are here to give and receive love. Your ego protects you from that vision by keeping you in a belief system that declares you are separate and special. By hanging on to the fears of your insufficiency, you can avoid taking any risks. As long as you have self-doubt and all of its attendant fears, you are guaranteed to stay in servitude to your false self. Your ego thrives on guilt. Your higher self knows that you should forgive yourself, learn from mistakes, and release feelings of fear and anxiety. But ego hands you guilt so that it will thrive. Guilt is the inner fear that you should pay a price for any and all mistakes you've committed in your life. Thus the ego convinces you that you must feel guilty, and it keeps you removed from your true spirit. Your ego doesn't reject love. The polite background ego voice whispers that love is a high ideal, but one that is loaded with danger. It warns you to not give too much love because you may be taken advantage of. Because you are so special, it tells you others want to take advantage of you. Ego promotes inauthentic love. In your relationships with others, your ego convinces you that your partner is just what you need to fill the emptiness within you. This is a great ruse that will forever keep you from knowing love and peace. Make a copy of this passage from Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Tape it to your mirror and read it every morning. It will help stimulate the inner opening to the love you seek and dissolve fears if you are willing to do what the poet suggests. He says, "I exist as I am. That is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each and all be aware, I sit content. One world is aware, and by far the largest to me, and that is myself. And whether I come to my own today or in 10,000 or 10 million years, I can cheerfully take it now, or with equal cheerfulness, I can wait. Remind yourself that God created you in perfect love, that is changeless and eternal. As you recognize and affirm this aloud each day, you will lose your fear of inadequacy and incompleteness. Constantly recalling the affirmation of being a creation of God beyond the world of the manifest will chase the fears away. Forgive yourself and welcome love back into your life.
Sounds have power. Now, again, this often will fly in the face of that which we have been taught by our ego mind. The beauty of sound is that there are different dimensions. There's the dimension of the world of form that we all are experiencing, that we're all in. All right, what our bodies and our chairs and our beds and our houses and all of that. There's that world of form, and that's a vibration. It vibrates at a certain speed. And then there's the other level of way, way, way up past that called the etheric level, which is another vibration, the world of thought and the world of spirit. In between there's an intermediary dimension. And that intermediary dimension between the world of form and the world of spirit or thought is the vibration of sound. And sound is our access to those higher, faster vibrations of speed and thought. So that even though we can't see sound, we can measure it pretty well with scopes and so on. We can tell how fast the vibrations go. Through sound, we can leave the world of form and use it as a vehicle for getting to that level of divine intelligence, which is vibrating at a very, very, like trillions and trillions and trillions of times per second, versus sound, which is between 30,000 vibrations and, say, 16,000 vibrations, whatever it is. So think about sounds like this. And certain sounds, therefore, have different capacities than other sounds. And there are certain sounds that are associated with this ability to be able to manifest. And if you learn these sounds and practice these sounds and meditate to these sounds, you will begin to access and make contact with the higher vibrational frequencies beyond the world of form. And so what Guruji explained to me is that there are two essential chakras in the body to be concerned with in terms of manifesting. One is called the root chakra, the base chakra, or the sex center. And the root chakra then has a channel, an internal invisible channel that goes from the base chakra to the third eye. And the third eye is the place that is located on your forehead between your eyebrows. Okay? And you think of this as a chakra or as an opening or as a computer terminal, if you will, that has been closed over. And to be able to radiate out energy from the third eye while meditating and sending that energy out into the world is one of the ways that we practice manifestation. And he said that there are two sounds to think about. One sound is the sound of creation. And the sound of creation, it's interesting, he encouraged me to look up the names that we have come up with throughout history for the Creator. Ra, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Wakantanka, Adonai, Brahma, Siddha, Ahura Mazda, Shiva, Jehovah, Yahweh, God, Atto, Allah. And what is the sound that is with each and every one of these? The sound of Ah. This sound of creation, the sound of Ah, is the sound of God. And it is a vibration like everything else that is mediation between the world of matter and the world of spirit. And it is the only sound that you make that requires no effort. As I open my mouth and make the sound ah, notice that if I move anything, I change the sound. But if I move nothing, I have the sound of ah, and it's the only sound that requires no effort. So it's ah. Now as I move it, do you see what happens? The minute that I move anything, the sound stops. It's not an accident that this sound is in the names for all creators, because sounds originated with ancient sages vocalizing what they heard in their meditations. This sound of ah. It is the repetition of the sound of God. And I'm going to put this energy of ah out into the universe. And as I do, I am going to attract to myself, through the power of creation, the way that you unite your mind, which is on the left-hand side, with the self, which is on the right-hand side. The way that you do this is through the use of the sound of ah. There's also another sound, and this second sound is the sound of all that has been manifested in the world. This is your meditation of gratitude. If you take anything in the physical plane and reduce it down to its basic sound and put it on a scope and measure that sound, you will hear the sound of Om. The sound of Om. It is the universal sound. It is the sound of gratitude. In the evening meditation, you also repeat the sound of Om. But you don't ask for anything. You just send out your gratitude for all that has manifested in your life. And you will feel an enormous sense of peace and joy.
Resist not evil means giving up fighting your problems. I want to stress again the significance of removing force from your life as a way of achieving a problem-free life. When you become a fighter against anything, you join forces with that which created the problem in the first place. When Mother Teresa was asked during the Vietnam War, "Will you join our march against this war?" she replied, "No, I won't. But if you have a march for peace, I'll be there." When we put our collective energy on what we are for, bringing kindness and love to bear on our differences of opinions, the need to resist ends. It is only through a change in consciousness that our world will be transformed. This is true of your life and all of your problems as well. Hold no one or no thing in judgment. In the material world, we often find ourselves in conflict because of our opinions about right and wrong. You cannot bring spiritual harmony into problem resolution as long as you accept the idea that one side is right and the other is wrong. Letting go of judgments and simply finding a way of bringing non-judgmental harmony to a problem eliminates the ego's need to make someone wrong, which inevitably exacerbates the problem. One of the most compelling ideas I have personally learned regarding judgment is this: when you judge another person, you do not define them. You merely define yourself as someone who needs to judge. Just because you make an assertion that someone is stupid or cheap or arrogant or flighty or promiscuous does not define that person. It only says something in you is having a conflict with something outside of you. If judgment continues without seeking the source of the conflict within you, problems will continue unabated. Your own level of spiritual energy is immediately raised when you are able to resist that temptation to judge others as wrong and yourself as right. True nobility is not about being better than anyone else. It is about being better than you used to be. Knowing that you have just as much to teach me as I to teach you affirms for me that I am not better than any person out there on this planet. Yet at the same time, I know that I am better than I used to be. Much better. I am no longer dominated by my ego's need to be right, to accomplish and triumph. I now ask how may I serve before wondering what's in it for me. I teach meditation rather than medication, and I'm a better father, husband, and son than I once was. You must slow down to speed up your spiritual energy. Ironically, fast-paced, frantic activity is a very low, slow form of energy. When your mind and your body are in a constant state of worry and anxiety, meeting deadlines and scurrying to keep the next appointment, remember that in the world of physical form, the actual energy pattern is extremely slow. Hence the irony: when you slow yourself down and emanate peaceful, tranquil thoughts, you actually send the anxiety and stress out of your life. Similarly, when you meditate, you bring God's silent love into your present moments. By slowing your mind and freeing it from the endless chatter of thoughts competing against other thoughts, you allow the fastest vibrations of spirit to enter. I have used a technique in traffic to slow my mind down and consequently allow the peace of God's fast vibrations to be present within me. When I am stopped at a red light, I usually choose to use this minute to still and stop my mind as well. I find that I can simply close my eyes, meditate for the prescribed stoppage time, and experience the peace of that moment. I have also discovered that there is almost always someone behind me who will give me a considerate wake-up honk to remind me that my meditation time is up. Here is one of the most famous prayers of all time. It's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, upon which the remainder of this program is based. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. St. Francis of Assisi.
Happiness isn't something in the material world that can be acquired and stored and used when needed or wanted. If it were, I'd give you a lifetime supply that would guarantee a happy life. No, happiness is an attitude that comes from within you. It's accessible when you place in your imagination an I am statement that reflects your attunement with the simple truth that happiness is indeed an inside job. Happiness is an inner belief that you bring to everyone and everything you undertake, rather than expecting your happiness to come to you from others or from your accomplishments or your acquisitions. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. State your intention to live a happy, contented life, place it squarely in the most prominent place within your imagination, and live from that place as if it were your reality. When circumstances and or your five senses try to influence you that you're wrong, gently and with loving confidence, let the fearful or naysaying thoughts drift by like passing clouds as you focus on your nourishing imagination, which cannot be altered without your agreement. Neville speaks without hesitation on this matter. Quote, "The promise is definite that if you are shameless in your impudence in assuming that you already have that which your senses deny, it shall be given unto you. Your desire shall be attained." Unquote. Don't be dismayed when you encounter people and circumstances that attempt to convince you the "I am happy" assertion that you've placed in your imagination is absurd. Don't let these objective attempts influence you to assume the feeling of a wish for unhappiness to be fulfilled. Persist in stating your inner mantras of "I am happy" and "I am content," while assuming the feeling in your body of this already fulfilled. Or, as Neville stated, be shameless in your impudence in assuming the feeling of happy contentment. This means that you permit only your personal subjective attention to align with your inner I am declaration. Your subconscious mind understands who you intend to be, and you will naturally discontinue inviting or entertaining any form of "I have a right to be miserable." How could I ever be happy with the circumstances that define my life? My parents and spouse and sister or any external relationship make me unhappy, and so on. How is it ever possible for God to say, "I am miserable," or "I am unhappy"? Remember, you have a highest self, and it is one with God. Here is Saint Germain speaking on this subject in a transmission received on November the 24th, 1932. Quote, I would suggest that those who have been having unpleasant experiences would consciously withdraw from those conditions all power they have been giving them, mostly unknowingly. When it is necessary to discuss some condition to understand it, immediately follow by withdrawing any power that has been given it, and then know, I am the harmonious presence, ever pervading whatever the condition may be. When I say I am the governing presence, I am fully consciously aware that I have set in motion the full power and intelligence of God producing the desired conditions, and that they are thus self-sustained." Unquote. I urge you to read and sustain this message regarding your own happiness. Be dedicated to your own subjective attention, always reminding it and yourself that I am the harmonious and governing presence. You will activate the power of God because you are at one with your all-creating source. Whether it's your health, wealth, happiness, or any other element of your entire life experience, it is essential to keep in mind the importance of the movement of your attention. You must be obstinate and persistent in not allowing the viewpoints or information of others to alter your inner world. You know what you wish to become and what you would like to manifest for yourself. Now keep your imagination so aligned and feel it in your body. Using your subjective attention will produce the desired conditions. Inner intentions are a private matter between you and your source of being. Inviting others to support or consider your intentions is an invitation to their objective attention. Responses are often designed to convince you that your intention is an impossible dream. You'll be in the position of defending or at the very least explaining yourself. This is an invitation to ego, who will leap at this opportunity to shift your inner intentions and dispute the external, supposedly logical or scientific facts that are coming your way. Manifestation is a spiritual exercise. Thus, it defies logic, facts, past experience, scientific evidence, and all sorts of objective opinions. Keep it a private matter in the spirit of Neville. Quote, "Therefore, when you know what you want, you must deliberately focus your attention on the feeling of your wish fulfilled until that feeling fills the mind and crowds all other ideas out of consciousness." Unquote. Keep your intentions private, avoiding the necessity of deflecting well-meaning opinions from external sources.
My sister-in-law, Marilyn, was driving on the Lodge Freeway in Detroit with her husband, my brother, and their 3 children in the back seat. Now, she is a hardcore, linear, left-brain skeptic. I mean, you had to show me. Otherwise, it doesn't exist for her. Medicine was her model. Anything that has to do with the mind, very skeptical. This car jumped the guardrail on the other side, on the southbound lane, and landed right in her face at 60 miles an hour. She saw the wheels coming and land right there. Every bone in her face was broken. Her kidneys were punctured. She had internal bleeding and was in intensive care for 13 weeks. They took her into the hospital unconscious. And no one thought that she was going to survive the night. She was really in bad shape. And they performed surgery on her for 14 hours. And there was a team of surgeons, 6 of them. And they were talking during the surgery. As you can imagine, for 14 hours you would be talking. My sister-in-law reported to me in 1971, when I was 31 years old, and just sort of starting on this path, that she watched the entire surgery. She said, "Wayne, you're the only person, you're the only weird one in the family. All right? And you're weird enough to believe this, you know." So anyway, Marilyn said to me, "Wayne," she said, "what happened is that I left my body." And she said, "I went up to the corner of the room. I was surrounded by this light, and I was in the presence of God." It was like a consciousness. It was like, I can't describe it because it doesn't have boundaries. It didn't have form, but it was a magnificent light. And I was there, and there was this tunnel. And I could have gone through this tunnel, and I had the choice, and it was so peaceful, and it felt so good. It was the most blissful I've ever been in my life. And she said, and I watched the surgeons performing on me, and I watched them working on my body, knowing that that wasn't me.
when she came out of it after 14 hours of surgery, there were two of the surgeons, they were voting on whether they should continue this or not, or whether they should just pull the plug. She had very little heartbeat at all, and she was so badly punctured internally, and her bleeding was so bad, and there was infection and so on, that they just didn't think she would, and if she did survive, they thought it was. So two of them were saying, let's just give up on this, and go on to other people. The four doctors prevailed, who said that we really believe that we can save this person. And Marilyn then made it. She had three little children. My two nephews and one niece were in the backseat. They were just little children at the time, 2, 4, and 5. And Marilyn decided that she could re-enter, even though it was painful and didn't want to do it. She was it's like given the choice. And she went back. And when she came out of it, she told the surgeons which ones had said, let's give up on it, and which ones had said, let's stay with it. And she had gave them word for word what they had said in this event. And she said, it was at that time that I became really, truly aware. And she said, since then, she has gotten to meet some of what they call NDEers, near-death experiences. And that everybody who has this near-death experience, Raymond Moody writes about it, has the same thing to report. And that is that when they come back, and they do it reluctantly, they have what we call the big picture. And since then, I mean, you wouldn't believe my sister-in-law. She is the calmest, most loving, easiest going. You can't get to her. You can't get to her. She has an inner candle flame that never flickers, though the worst goes before her. And the worst is my brother. And he goes before her all the time. And he's very linear. He's an insurance judge. He's a wonderful, loving, beautiful person. All of his stuff is motivated out of caring and concern. He wants to always, but he wants to do so damn much that it becomes like, all right, enough. I got the map. All right, yeah, but do you know which turn to make? Yeah, I know. And it's half an hour of that kind of. And she just sits there and just reads. And when there's a family squabble and people get themselves all upset, she just picks up a book and just excuses herself. And she goes over into the corner, and the kids say, when someone will be around, their friends, they say, what's with your mom? And they all say, oh, she's got the big picture. It's like having the big picture. And these people, all of them report when they come back from that, they have this like near-death experience. It's like tension and stress and anxiety and fear and all of that stuff that occupies so much of our lives is just gone. It's just not a part of the consciousness any longer. My suggestion is that we don't have to have that kind of traumatic event happen to our form to understand the universal principles and to surrender to them and to make them work every day in our life. That we don't have to go there. That we can unmuddle all of this metaphysical psychobabble, jargons kind of stuff and begin to live the spiritual life and have the understanding that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience, and that the quality of that human experience is only available to us through our thoughts, through our mind, through our divine connection. And that whatever your religious belief, whatever label you place on yourself, try not to think of yourself as Christian. Try to be Christ-like, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Try not to think of yourself as Jewish, but be Jehovah-like, or Buddha-like, or Muhammad-like. These were not people who were asking anyone to deify idols and wooden deities and an orthodoxy. But instead we're talking about kindness and love and forgiveness and gentleness and spirit, and that we're all connected, and you begin to live that way. And it's really quite an easy thing to do.
Sounds have the power to generate your ability to attract to yourself that which you desire. 3 key words describing the principle are the title of the following section. Listen carefully to these 3 words. Sounds have power. Sounds are a powerful energy. Every sound is a vibration made of waves oscillating at a particular frequency. The frequency range of the human ear is approximately 16 to roughly 40,000 vibrations per second. Sound is the intermediary between abstract ideas and concrete form in the material world. Sounds literally mold the abstract world of thought and spirit into shapes.
In ancient ceremonial rites, words, sounds, and shapes combine to achieve certain ends. Each letter in a word signifies a sound and records the expression of a particular sound. Differing sounds were recorded for their own purposes. Sounds have an impact on us in a myriad of ways. The discordant and harassing sounds of machines, thudding, screaming, grating noises, bombard our consciousness and make it difficult to be serene and peaceful. Discordant sounds can cause internal illness or disease. But sound also has healing properties when it is harmonious and soothing. Healing takes place to the accompaniment of soothing harmonies and nature's music interspersed with spiritually nourishing silence. In addition to healing, sound is used in the creation process, which is the central concern of this seventh principle of spiritual manifestation. When we use the sounds of nature that are most consistent with the act of creation, we begin to attract the material form that we desire. Learning how to use sound is a way of harnessing its power for manifesting thought into the world of form. Manifesting is knowing how to make contact with that spiritual vibrational frequency while we are living inside a body in a materialized world. Pay attention to words and sounds because they can attract positive or negative influences into your life. Harmonious sounds are the ones that most contribute to a balanced and creative life. But before going into the actual use of meditation sounds, it is necessary to learn how to prepare yourself to use sounds in your daily meditation. You need to gain access to a method that will take you beyond the mind to a state of consciousness that transcends your thoughts. This higher state of consciousness beyond the mind is called Siddhi awareness. S-I-D-D-H-I. Siddhi awareness. Siddhi awareness or Siddhi consciousness is a perfect state of awareness in which there is a complete absence of doubt and no delay between the origination of a thought and its materialization into the world of form. It is an unlimited state of being in which creation occurs instantly without any time lag from thought to form. When we contemplate this state of grace, our minds challenge the idea and provide us with many reasons as to why it is impossible. Siddhi consciousness, however, has absolutely nothing to do with the mind. Let that sink in. Siddhi consciousness is beyond the mind. This state of graceful being has nothing to do with the mind, whose nature is a constant inner monologue. The mind frets continually about an unlimited number of desires that can never be adequately fulfilled. You can give your body great pleasures with booze and sex, give it fancy automobiles and delectable gourmet meals, body massages, and every other imaginable delight. The next morning, when it recovers, your mind has a new list of demands taped to your forehead, asking for more and more of what it can never get enough of. This is the nature of the mind, which is ruled by the ego. Your mind, then, is only a barrier to experiencing Siddhi consciousness, wherein you are in a state of bliss and complete acceptance, and your desires are the same as your experience of life. Your mind blocks the vision of your highest awareness. Your highest self has its own language. When your body is stilled and totally in the present, thoughts disappear. Then you can start the exquisite process of meditating with sound. It is the magic of this sound meditation that I am going to explain in the seventh principle. This is a siddha technique to take you beyond the constraints of the ego and the mind to a place within yourself where you can change your vibrational frequency through the use of sounds of creation. There's a magic to the sound of creation. As you begin to incorporate these ideas of the power of sound into your consciousness, going beyond the darkness of your mind to the light of your highest self, think about these words that open the book of John in the New Testament. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The word God has the same sound that is in virtually all of the names for the original creator. All traditions describe a creator of the Word and humankind. Here is a list of names used for the Creator. Ra, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Adonai, Brahman, Siddha, Shiva, Jehovah, Kali Durga, Tat, Gayana, Mahanta, Mahavira, Anu, Atva, Nanak, Yahweh, God, Allah. The obvious sound that is in all of these names for the Creator is the sound Ah. Ah expresses a feeling of bliss and joy. The sounds of creation and joy are synonymous. It is not an accident that the name for the Creator in virtually all languages contains the sound Ah. Ah is the only sound that humans make effortlessly, simply by taking in a breath and without moving the lips, the tongue, the jaw, or the teeth. If you move any of these, the sound changes. Ah is the sound of effortless perfection, as is creation itself effortless and perfect. Ah, the sound of creation, is one sound you will want to use as you practice the language of Siddhi consciousness. It takes you beyond the incessant self-dialogue that characterizes your mind. When you repeat the sound ah in connection with your manifestation meditation practice, you are literally repeating the name of God. Everything you need to have total happiness and fulfillment and success and love in your life, you already have. You already have it right now. Wherever you are, whoever you are, you have it right this minute. Just a matter of deciding to believe that. A woman asked me one time, what are the blocks to my happiness? She said, what are the blocks? I want to know the blocks. I said, the belief that you have blocks. You believe you have blocks. As soon as you believe you have blocks, you create the need to have blocks. And now you want to find out what the blocks are. There are no blocks out there. If you send them all away, stop believing that you'll have blocks. Then you stop looking for the blocks, and you stop defending the blocks, and you look for something else. People tend to blame circumstances for their unhappiness. They say, someone close to me is sick, and that makes me unhappy. And I said to them, no, that doesn't make you unhappy. Someone else close to you is sick, that cannot make you unhappy. And they say, well, how is that possible? What do you mean? They're sick and I'm unhappy and they must be making me unhappy. I said, no, supposing that same person was sick and you didn't know about it. You just didn't know they were sick. Could you be unhappy? Well, of course not. How could I be unhappy about something I didn't know about? Well, they were sick. Their sickness didn't cause you to be unhappy. Their sickness existed independent of you. It's when you find out about it and process it and think about it in a certain way and you say, oh, that shouldn't be happening. Oh, that's awful. Or oh, that's my friend. Or that's my mother. Or those things shouldn't be happening to me. People don't want to take the responsibility and say, I am making myself unhappy by what I see in life. Now, you may not want to be joyful about someone close to you being sick, but you have to be responsible for what's going on inside of you. My job was to teach people how to find methods to be able to manage their emotions more effectively. I now believe that you have to be the method. Okay? There is no method that you can find. You can't rely on a method any more than if you're overweight, you can rely on a diet, or if you're smoking, you can rely on a cure or hypnotism or some kind of thing external to yourself. Or if you want to be religious, you can't rely on someone else to do it for you. It's that being that is the big difference. I believe I was directed to help people to understand that they have greatness within them and not to fear that greatness. That the reason people are not good at getting what they want out of life is not so much that they don't have the skills or the abilities, but in fact they don't think that they deserve it. Or if they do think they deserve it, they're afraid of it because it's bigger than I am. And there's a truth out there in the universe someplace, however it works, and I'm studying this now for some books I'll be writing in the future, that says you are not going to get it all. You are it all. You are not going to find happiness. You are happiness. You bring happiness to what you do in life rather than trying to get happiness out of what you do. Big, big difference between those two premises. Because you're not searching for happiness anymore when you have it within you. I always tell people I'm not in the pleasure business. Right? I'm in the happiness business or the joy business, not in the pleasure business, even though pleasure's great. The distinction I make here is that when you become enlightened, you begin to find happiness in the absences of pleasure in your life. You can find happiness in that. You can embrace your colds, if you will, your headaches or your backaches or whatever, as opportunities. Rather than saying that if I don't have all pleasure, then I can't be happy, what you say is, I am happy even with the things that I don't like that are going on in my life right now. So you learn to find joy in those and embrace those things rather than trying to always send them away. And the suffering that you're experiencing, if you just stop right now and look at your payoffs for it and why you continue to do it, you will see that your suffering comes from wanting the world to be different than it is, or wanting somebody in the world to be different than they are. And when you stop that, when you just accept rather than want, then your suffering has to go out the window with it. And this is not to say that you can't desire things. You don't even have to say you can't want things. You can certainly want anything. But to need it for me to be happy must go. To understand what we're talking about here, you must understand that bringing happiness to something is very much different than trying to get it out of something. And when you are bringing it to something, then you always have it. When you're looking for it, it will always elude you. Always.